The title of today's podcast is the quotation, "The Holy Spirit's voice is as loud as your willingness to listen." During this podcast, I ask you to focus on the meaning of this title. Focus on the willingness that you have to listen only to the Holy Spirit instead of listening to the voice of the ego. We will be discussing Chapter 8, The Journey Back, Section 8, Body as Means or End, paragraphs 7 through 9. We will also discuss Section 9, Healing as Corrected Perception, paragraph 1. Starting with paragraph 7 in section 8. Can the body be your teacher? No, the body is only a learning device and, quote, a learning device is not a teacher. As a learning device, the body is used by your mind to facilitate communication, which is guided by the Holy Spirit, who is your real teacher. Can the body tell you how you feel? No. You cannot ask the body how you feel and get a correct answer because the body is just a learning device and because the body is not you. Feelings are the result of thoughts, and thoughts come only from your mind, which is another reason the body, quote, cannot tell you how you feel. If you believe the ego when it deceives you by telling you that you are a body, you will also believe that you can ask the body what? You will believe that you can ask the body how you feel, and you will believe that you can get a correct answer. Quote, you do not know how you feel because you have accepted the ego's confusion, and you therefore believe that a learning device can tell you how you feel. The ego welcomes sickness because of what reason? Because sickness provides the ego's false witness that tells you that you are not invulnerable as God created you, and because the ego wants you to turn to it for guidance and protection. Well, sickness is merely another example of your insistence on asking guidance of a teacher who does not know the answer. The Holy Spirit is qualified to be your true teacher because he possesses what kind of awareness? The Holy Spirit possesses both the total awareness of knowledge and the limited awareness of perception, but his perception is perfect and always correct perception. Why is the ego not qualified to be your teacher or guide? Because the ego does not have the total awareness of knowledge and even the ego's limited awareness of perception is inaccurate and unstable. If you ask the ego how you feel, how will it respond? The ego will gladly share with you its own confusion and deceptive information about you and about how you feel. Quote, the ego is incapable of knowing how you feel. When I said that the ego does not know anything, I said the one thing about the ego that is wholly true. Your true being in heaven possesses what awareness? Your true being possesses the total awareness of knowledge, just as all beings in heaven possess knowledge. The ego is a misguided part of your mind, but does the ego have being, meaning, does the ego exist? No. The ego does not have being and does not exist, but you can mistakenly believe that the ego does exist. Outside of heaven, there are only illusions that seem to exist, such as the ego, which has no heavenly being and no knowledge. A corollary to the fact that the ego knows nothing is the following. Quote, if only knowledge has being and the ego has no knowledge, then the ego has no being. Paragraph 8. If you can accept intellectually that the ego does not exist, your mind may ask what question? Your mind may ask why the ego's deceptive voice is so persistent in your mind. Quote, you might well ask how the voice of something that does not exist can be so insistent. What makes it easy for the ego to deceive you? It is easy to be deceived by the ego if you want to be deceived. You have forgotten what about why you made the ego? You have forgotten that you made the ego because you wanted to be deceived by it, so you could forget about your Father and forget your identity in heaven. Quote, have you thought about the distorting power of something you want, even if it is not real? Your mind can think clearly without distortion when your desire and your will are directed toward what? When your desire and will are directed toward the single goal of wanting only the truth and nothing else. When you want something else besides the truth, what happens to your mind? What you want will bring distorted perception into your mind, which is lacking in truth. Well, there are many instances of how what you want distorts perception. If you choose an ego-based goal, you will accept what thoughts from the ego. You will accept the ego's faults, but appealing justifications for obtaining that goal which you seek. Quote, no one can doubt the ego's skill in building up false cases. You are willing to listen to the voice of the ego and accept the ego's false justifications because you do not want what? Because you do not want the truth, and you do want your ego-based goal that opposes the truth. Quote, nor can anyone doubt your willingness to listen until you choose not to accept anything except truth. You made the ego by doing what? You made the ego by believing in it and wanting what it could offer you in the way of deceiving you about the truth. You can and you will allow the ego to be completely undone and dispelled from your mind when you decide that you no longer want to do what? When you decide that you no longer want to deceive yourself by abandoning the truth. Well, when you lay the ego aside, it will be gone. When you are unwilling to sacrifice the truth so you can get something else, you will be willing to invest increasingly in what? To invest increasingly in listening to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit has been placed in your mind permanently by God, but your awareness of His voice depends on what? Depends on your willingness to listen, and your willingness depends on how much you want only the truth. Quote, the Holy Spirit's voice is as loud as your willingness to listen, which, as I said earlier, is the title for today's podcast. The Holy Spirit never imposes Himself on your mind, forcing you to listen to His voice. Because of what reason? Because the Holy Spirit honors your free will. The voice of the Holy Spirit can only come into your awareness by your what? By your free will invitation. The Holy Spirit's voice cannot be louder than your willingness to listen, quote, without violating your freedom of choice, which the Holy Spirit seeks to restore, never to undermine. The ego teaches you that your will is only free if you are free to do what? If you are free to oppose God's will and be unloving. But being unloving goes against your true nature of love and actually divides, weakens, and imprisons your will, which is the same as God's will of love. The Holy Spirit teaches that your will is only free and strong if you are always doing what? if you are always expressing God's will of love, because love is your true nature as God created you, and because God's will is your own true will. Paragraph 9. When you use the body only for the one unified purpose of communication, you are doing what with the Holy Spirit's teachings? You are carrying the teachings of the Holy Spirit to your brothers through your body. Quote, the Holy Spirit teaches you to use your body only to reach your brothers so he can teach his message through you. The ego teaches you to do what in relation to your brothers? Teaches you to separate from your brothers and attack them, which brings sickness to you. The Holy Spirit teaches you to do what in relation to your brothers? Teaches you to manifest loving communication by connecting in oneness with your brothers, which brings wholeness and healing to your brothers and to yourself. Using the body to share the Holy Spirit's teachings with your brothers, quote, will heal them and therefore heal you. What is the result of the body fulfilling only the function assigned by the Holy Spirit? The result is that the body will be whole and healthy, and the body cannot become sick. Quote, everything used in accordance with its function as the Holy Spirit sees it cannot be sick. If the body is used for an ego-based function not assigned by the Holy Spirit, what will be the result? The body will become vulnerable to sickness. Quote, everything used otherwise is inviting sickness caused by its ego-based function. Your perceptual mind is split into what two parts? The two parts are your right mind guided by the Holy Spirit and your ego-based mind guided by the ego. If you allow the body's purpose to be assigned by the Holy Spirit only sometimes and assigned by the ego at other times, your body will be a reflection of what? A reflection of your split mind, and so your body will sometimes be healthy and sometimes sick. Quote, do not allow the body to be a mirror of a split mind. When you let the body's purpose be assigned by the ego, your body will reflect the ego's perception of what about you. Your body will reflect your weakness, and the body will become sick. Quote, do not let it here refers to the body, do not let it be an image of your own perception of littleness. If you listen to the ego, you will use the body for what purpose? You will use the body for the purpose of attempting to attack your brothers, which will unknowingly be an attack on yourself. Do not let the body, quote, reflect your decision to attack. If you want health, you need to accept only what interpretation of the body? Accept only the Holy Spirit's interpretation of the body as a means of communication. Quote, health is seen as the natural state of everything when interpretation is left to the Holy Spirit, who perceives no attack in anything. If you want to remain healthy, you will have to focus only on using the body to express what emotion? To focus only on using the body to express love, and to set aside all ego-based temptations to project guilt and to attack. Quote, health is the result of relinquishing all attempts to use the body lovelessly. If you listen only to the Holy Spirit, you will be healthy, and you will have what perspective? You will have the correct perspective of living your life in accordance with God's will of love for you. Quote, health is the beginning of the proper perspective on life under the guidance of the one teacher who knows what life is, being the voice for life itself. The Holy Spirit is the voice for life itself because he is also what? Because the Holy Spirit is the voice for God, who is life. Quote, for God is life, and they means all living beings, for God is life, and they abide in life. Life is as holy as the holiness by which it was created. Moving on to section 9, paragraph 1. If life in this world is a test, and if you get the correct perceptual answers to this test and apply those answers to your life test, what will be the result? The result will be that you will receive the reward of waking up in heaven. If you get the wrong answers to this life test, what will be the result? You will be reincarnated, and you will have to take the same life test all over again. If you want all the answers that you need to pass the test of worldly life, all you have to do is what? To listen to and to put into application the answer. And that's a capital A at the beginning of answer, because the answer here is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was created by God as a response to what? The Holy Spirit was created as God's instant response and as the answer to the separation. In addition to being God's immediate response to the event of the separation itself, the ego continues to be the answer because of what reason? Because God placed the Holy Spirit in your mind as the correct answer to every perceptual question that you might want to ask him. Quote, I said before that the Holy Spirit is the answer, and He is the answer to everything because He knows what the answer to everything is. What does the ego know and perceive correctly? The ego does not have the total awareness of knowledge, so the ego knows nothing. The ego does have the limited awareness of perception, but it perceives nothing correctly. The ego gives you only incorrect answers that are specifically intended to do what? The incorrect answers of the ego are specifically intended to confuse you and deceive you, especially about your identity. Quote, the ego is a confusion in identification. Does the ego recognize a meaningful question? No, because all meaning comes from God, who is unrecognizable to the ego. Quote, the ego does not know what a real question is, although it asks an endless number. The Holy Spirit evaluates everything by its what? By its source, recognizing that what comes from God is meaningful and valuable, and what comes from the ego is meaningless and not valuable. Just as the Holy Spirit evaluates every belief by its source, you can do likewise by doing what? By recognizing the source of the answers you receive to your questions. How can you recognize if the ego or the Holy Spirit is the source of a specific answer that you receive to a specific question? If fear comes into your mind, you can recognize that the answer you receive comes from the ego. If peace comes into your mind, you can recognize that the answer you receive comes from the Holy Spirit. Gradually, you will learn to increasingly accept what? To increasingly accept only the truthful and meaningful answers given to you by the Holy Spirit, who is the voice for God. Quote, we will not indulge the ego by listening to its attacks on truth. We will merely be glad that we can find out what the truth is. Guided by the Holy Spirit, you can learn to recognize what about the ego. You can learn to recognize the meaninglessness of the ego and of the ego's questions and answers, and then you can withdraw all value from what the ego offers to you. You can learn to recognize the meaninglessness of the ego's offerings, quote, as you learn to question the value of the ego and thus establish your ability to evaluate its questions. This section 9 is titled Healing as Corrected Perception, to emphasize what idea about sickness. to emphasize the idea that sickness starts with incorrect perception in your mind when it is guided by the ego. What causes a sick body? A sick body is merely a symptom of a sickness in the mind caused by incorrect mental perception. If you experience sickness in the body, is asking the Holy Spirit to heal your body the best approach to manifest healing? The best approach to manifest healing is to not just seek the healing of a physical symptom without healing its cause, which is in the mind. Quote, when the ego tempts you to sickness, do not ask the Holy Spirit to heal the body, for this would merely be to accept the ego's belief that the body is the proper aim of healing. Instead of wanting to heal only a physical symptom in the body, you need to learn from the Holy Spirit how to heal what? You need to learn how to heal the incorrect perception in the mind that caused the physical symptom. Quote, ask, rather, that the Holy Spirit teach you the right perception of the body, for perception alone can be distorted. Can the body make itself sick? The body cannot make itself sick or make itself well. Quote, the body can act wrongly. The body acting wrongly means the body can get sick. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. The mind that is guided by the Holy Spirit will be used to think in what way? To think correctly, and therefore think creatively to extend love and foster health. The mind that is guided by the ego will be used to think in what way? Will be used to think incorrectly and therefore think miscreatively. An example of miscreative thinking is thinking used to attack, which results in thoughts of guilt within the mind. What is the definition of guilt? Guilt is defined as the self-imposed false belief that punishment is deserved and love is not deserved. When the mind is guided by the ego to use incorrect and miscreative thinking, the mind will project what onto the body? The mind thinking miscreatively will project guilt within the mind onto the body. Because of the belief that guilt deserves punishment, the mind projecting guilt onto the body will do what to the body? The miscreative thinking of the mind will punish the body by causing the body to become sick. What is the word the Course uses to identify the mind's incorrect and miscreative thinking being used to project guilt onto the body, which result in sickness? This word is what the Course calls magic. Quote, magic is the mindless or miscreative use of the mind. When you see physical symptoms in the body, the cause is always due to what? The cause is always due to incorrect and miscreative thinking, which is magical perception. Quote, physical illness represents a belief in magic. What is the reason why the body itself cannot create by expressing love, and also why the body itself cannot miscreate and produce magic? The reason is that the body itself obviously cannot think. Creating and miscreating are caused exclusively by the thinking of the mind. You might think that the brain in the body thinks, but actually the brain is like a telephone. The brain doesn't decide anything. It doesn't think. It doesn't have the ability to use perception. The brain just sends and receives messages like a telephone. The mind guided by the ego can believe and encourage you to mistakenly believe that the body can do what? To mistakenly believe that the body can think and cause its own physical symptoms, which is magical thinking. The body cannot think creatively or miscreatively. Quote, the body cannot create. The belief that the body can create, and therefore the belief that the body can likewise miscreate, is a fundamental error that produces what? Quote, produces all physical symptoms. What is the obvious reason why it is impossible for the body to cause its own physical symptoms? The obvious reason is that the body does not think, and the body takes all of its orders from the mind. If the mind manifests incorrect perceptions, this will be the cause that produces a sick body. Quote, only perception can be sick because only perception can be wrong. What is the one and only category of sickness? The only category of sickness is mental illness. Quote, sickness is insanity because all sickness is mental illness. If you succeed in healing a physical symptom of the body without healing the incorrect perception in the mind, what will be the result? Although a specific physical symptom is healed, this is not a cure because other physical symptoms will manifest to reveal to you that the cause of the physical symptoms has not been healed by correcting the incorrect perceptions in the mind. When you use only physical means to heal a physical symptom without healing the incorrect perceptions in the mind, you are expressing what? You are expressing magic, meaning you are using incorrect or miscreative thinking. Quote, all material means that you accept as remedies for bodily ills are restatements of magic principles. Your attempting to heal physical symptoms by using magic involves what mistake or misstep related to your belief about the body? Your using of magic represents your mistaken belief that the body causes its own sickness. Using magic, quote, is the first step in believing that the body makes its own illness. What is another mistake or misstep that occurs when you use magic? Another mistake that occurs when you use magic is the attempt to heal the body by using only physical remedies instead of using creative and loving thoughts to correct the incorrect perceptions in your mind that cause sickness. Quote, it is a second misstep to attempt to heal it through non-creative agents. All physical medications are actually what? Quote, physical medications are forms of spells. The word spells there refers to the idea of magic spells. Should you attempt to heal by using only the mind if you are afraid to use the mind to heal? No. Quote, if you are afraid to use the mind to heal, you should not attempt to do so. Those who are sick are already experiencing what state of mind? Those who are sick are already experiencing a fearful state of mind instead of the loving state of mind of a healthy person. The sick, quote, are already in a fear-weakened state. If you choose to not use any magic, meaning not use any physical means for healing yourself, and if you attempt to rely only on correcting false perceptions, these two choices may produce what result? These two choices may increase fear in your mind, but increasing fear is definitely not advisable, quote, because the last thing that can help the non-right-minded or the sick is an increase in fear. Because you want to avoid increasing fear, it is best in this case to make what reasonable approach to healing? To make a reasonable compromise approach by using the magic of a physical remedy, which a sick person is likely to believe will be helpful for the purpose of healing. In this case, to avoid increasing fear, quote, it may be wise to utilize a compromise approach to mind and body in which something from the outside is temporarily given healing belief. In general, what is one of the best things you can do to prevent sickness or even to heal the cause of sickness in the mind? You can use prayer and meditation to invite God's perfect love into your mind, which is also accepting the atonement, because, quote, perfect love is the atonement. How is the atonement related to fear? The atonement is the perfect remedy because it casts out fear. Quote, fear arises from lack of love. The only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. Accepting the perfect love of the atonement is the remedy for what? Accepting the perfect love of the atonement is the perfect remedy for all sickness because it heals the source of all sickness in the mind. Quote, atonement heals with certainty and cures all sickness. This is the same as saying accepting perfect love cures all sickness. What does accepting the atonement do that ensures that new physical symptoms will not return? Accepting the atonement removes the false belief in the reality of guilt, so the cause of sickness is removed, ensuring that new symptoms will not return to make the body sick again. Quote, atonement takes away the guilt that makes the sickness possible, and that is cure indeed, for sickness now is gone, with nothing left to which it can return. That was the last of the questions and answers portion of this podcast. Now I ask you to join me in a 1-minute meditation. For this meditation, I ask you to focus on your willingness to listen only to the voice of the Holy Spirit. We've learned here that in order to hear the Holy Spirit, we have to be willing to do so. It is this willingness, this desire to have the guidance of the Holy Spirit that enables us to hear the Holy Spirit and gives us the ability to act upon what the Holy Spirit tells us to think and to do. We've also learned that the Holy Spirit can answer any question we might ask. The Course talks about hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit. Many seekers don't actually hear a voice, like the voice of someone talking to them in the room or something like that. Nevertheless, when you ask the Holy Spirit for guidance, you can ask Him to direct your choices and your thinking and your approach to anything that you need to do. You don't have to hear His voice to ask Him to influence your mind. But what is helpful is if you place your trust, if you place your faith in the Holy Spirit. And by trusting the Holy Spirit, you can be sure that you will be helped. You can go throughout the day and ask the Holy Spirit to help you. Even if you can't hear His voice, you can speak to Him and express your willingness to be guided by Him. Not just once, but this needs to be renewed throughout the day. So you keep your mind open to the Holy Spirit. The problem we have is that if we don't continually ask the Holy Spirit to help us, we have a default mechanism that we all too often fall back on. And that default mechanism is the ego. When we don't ask for help, the ego rushes in and tries to give us advice. And so that's why we need to keep renewing our request for the Holy Spirit to influence our minds, influence our decisions, influence our actions. I'm going to set the timer for 1 minute. When the timer goes off, that will be the end of the meditation and the end of the podcast. Here we go together, focusing on our willingness to listen to the Holy Spirit and our willingness to ask for help from the Holy Spirit throughout the day. Amen.